I was struggling to stay alive. Okay, I'm watching the organs shut down one by one. I automatically know which ones are shutting off. Everything just shut off. I pop awake suddenly, somewhere in space and time. I didn't know where I was, but I knew that I was. But there is something more than this life. There's the dark void where the person is suspended temporarily while the spirit body begins to slowly come out of the physical. There's reconsciousness after death. It is what we would call God. When we're deep asleep, they come in.
Welcome everyone to Our Sliver of Time. Today we have a very special guest, Eugene Braxton, and he is here to talk about his near-death experience, and we're going to go through a whole range of related topics. It's going to be a very interesting conversation. But first and foremost, Eugene, thank you so much for coming. It's a pleasure.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me on your show.
If you don't mind giving us the premise of how did your near-death experience happen in the first place?
Um, Dave, mine was a drowning accident. I used to swim on two swim teams, so I could easily swim. Played water polo and competitive swimming. I used to live in Ohio. They had lakes and waterfalls that we used to swim in. So swimming was no problem. So I jumped off this dock of a lake and go down feet first because I was going to push off the bottom of the lake like you would in a pool. And my knee, I got stuck in the muck up to the knee and couldn't get loose. And so I sucked in a lot of that lake water. And that was when the near death started.
Were you with anyone? Were you swimming by yourself, or did you have friends around?
Yeah, I was with like a Sunday youth group. I was 14. I was with a Sunday youth group, uh, gang of kids, and then the adult chaperones. We were at this lake in Kent, Ohio, and we were running around the lake playing like it was a normal summer day. And so there were about, I guess, at least 15 of us, plus the adults. I thought someone might have seen, but no one ever did. I had the near death, an extended one that I remembered a good amount of because I had had out of bodies as a kid, heavily from age 6 to 16. And I had at lowest count, Dave, at least 12,000 at the lowest count. So by age 13, after 7 years, I was really used to it. 14. And the near death is a spiritual out of body. So when I awoke in that, I was kind of used to that environment and surroundings and the conditions of that.
Just out of curiosity, you mentioned that you've had out-of-body experiences prior to the near-death experience, which we will get back to. I'm just curious, was there a similarity there? Is it a similar feeling, you would say?
Yeah, the out of body is kind of like the baby brother to the near death. The near death is a spiritual out of body where an atheist can have a regular out of body, but might be limited to this earth plane, like walking around or floating around invisibly, trying to talk to people, and no one even sees or hears them. And the person actually thinks they're dreaming when they have that kind of out of body. But they were really out of body. And but the near death is a spiritual out of body that involves God, the higher levels, primal fear and primal ecstasy, its opposite component, elevation, after effects, white lights, all of that stuff. Um, so yeah, the one's spiritual one, and the other one is an atheist can have an out of body, but wouldn't ascend. The ascension wouldn't be as high as the near death out of body, but they're both related.
When you jump off into this water and you get stuck in the muck, if you will, um, what is going through your mind at the time? So you most likely, you said you assumed that someone must have saw you jump in, but evidently no one did. Um, what's going through your mind in that moment? You're trying to get out, what, if you could bring me back to that. I understand it's personal, so I appreciate, you kind of explaining this.
Yeah, yeah. Once I saw that I couldn't get my knee out of the muck, and that's what I call in my book the struggle for life or death. I was struggling to stay alive against nature or the lake that was, I was stuck in. And once I drank in all the water, and I sucked it in quickly like a vacuum, once I couldn't hold my breath anymore. Once I drank in all the water, and it came in all at once, like it was vacuumed in, uh, I began to become paralyzed and literally couldn't even fight to struggle for life and death anymore. The breathing had stopped. And while I was in that paralyzed position, I could feel uh, my body slowly shutting down. But the main thing I experienced during that struggle for life and death and during the initial paralyzations was the primal fear, knowing that I was going to die, that I probably couldn't get out of this, and that even my struggles couldn't get me out. So I kind of had to just take what fate was going to bring me. And that's a deep thing when you realize that I'm probably going to die right now, or I'm dying now. And so I was able to watch because of the drowning. I was and the prehistory of the out of bodies and the dreams and all that. I was able to slowly watch like each detail because there was nothing else to do. Slowly watch each detail of the death process. And as I fell on my side to fall down to die, the muck came up from the bottom of the lake and covered me like a cold death blanket. I was fully shivered and couldn't stop. So, and that was like an internal movement, but I could not physically move my own self. And I was shivering, there was pain, the body was shutting down. I could feel the organs slowly shutting off like candles. I still had the primal fear. I could see and hear, but the only thing I could do was hear my heartbeat and look straight ahead. I could see from the peripheral, but I couldn't move my eyes. I saw the paralysis slowly setting in from the toes up. And that's the same thing that happens in a regular out of body. The person is paralyzed so that the spirit body can come out, recharge in the electromagnetic energy that's in the air. It's called prana or chi, same thing. And then the person is again paralyzed upon re-entry. And if their level of consciousness is high enough, like yours was, when you had came in, you re-entered, and you could see yourself and feel yourself slowly going back into your body. That's a good thing because the person is just inches away from having a fully conscious out of body where they're consciously awake but invisible. And but to even be awake enough, especially during that process where entry and re-entry of the spirit body. See, when we go to sleep, the doctors don't fully understand. They know that sleep can cure a lot of things, and it's the main thing that can cure us. But when we go to sleep, it's not the sleep that cures or revitalizes us. It's the spirit body that comes out of the physical, recharges in the electromagnetic energy while it may be dreaming, like a battery, and then comes back into the physical. And that's when that paralysis happens. And we do that twice a night. And so there's especially, well, in the mornings is a good time to experience that, or when you're taking an afternoon nap because you're more fully charged. Usually people don't feel the paralyzations. They can when they're going to sleep because they're so tired that they knock straight out. But if they wake up at 3 and then go back to sleep, that's a highly likely time for them to have an out of body and remember it and be awakened.
You're in this moment in which you said that you could see your body almost, from the outside, if you will. As your body's shutting down, you could see your body almost from the outside, if you will. Um, what does this what's going through your mind at this point? Are you having conscious thoughts in the first place? When you see your body, do you feel anything about it? What are your thoughts, if any, at this moment?
Well, uh, when I fell down on the lake and the death process began, I had the primal fear. I was paralyzed. The main thoughts were of survival and how can I get out of it. And there wasn't any kind of conscious linear thinking, but I was listening and watching my body while trying to wait for someone possibly to come down. I thought someone might, at the last second come down because I had athlete friends who were swimming right up there. And at that time, I didn't connect the oncoming out of body to the previous out of bodies, because this was a new death scene and it was happening in reality. But my body was slowly becoming paralyzed because my spirit body would soon come out. I would expire, I would flatline, and the spirit body would soon come out. I'll just continue on with the what happened in the near death, and then if you have any questions, just jump in at any time. But that paralysis is it happens to us every night, and it will happen at the doctors call it rigor mortis, but the person is paralyzed. And whenever you have a paralyzation and you're asleep or in bed or half awake or half asleep or dying, that means you're about to have an out of body experience. The death will be a permanent out of body unless it's a near death. And then the sleep will be the little sleep, like Jesus said in the Bible, where you can semi-experience it. So, okay, I'm watching the organs shut down one by one. I automatically know which ones are shutting off, even because I was 14, even without knowing where the organs might be at age 14. And also the level of conscious awareness, how awake I was, began to go down to a dream level. So the organs were shutting down, and that automatic knowledge is part of that other world too, where you automatically know something and it seems fully natural. I knew that the two kidneys went, and there's the liver and the lungs. I could feel it, and I automatically knew it and took it as normal. The heartbeat was the last thing I felt. It slowly began to beat less and less, maybe one every 11 seconds at the end. And then with a loud boom and total darkness, everything just shut off. And it was like that for what's about 15 to 22 seconds. And that's the exact time it takes the spirit body to slowly come up out of the physical, regain consciousness, whether an out of body state or after death state, and then realized where they. So with me, the body shut down. I flatlined. The darkness. I was in that dark void, and in that dark void, because a lot of people have been talking about it lately. That's it's actually like PMH Atwater said, a spiritual dressing room, where that transformation, not only of consciousness, but transformation of the person's physiology, where they transfer over from a death to life. There's a change in the person's physiology and a change in the transfer of consciousness. And it takes only about 15 to 20 seconds, but can take up to 3 days, as it says in the Bible too. And I'm not a deep Bible person, but all those holy books, they all have some good info in them. And I was always looking for life after death stuff or anything in the esoteric that I could find in them.
Just out of curiosity, so you said that you've always been looking for life after death, kind of answers, if you will, to paraphrase you, right? Where does this come from? Is this something you've identified? At what point did you become interested in those answers?
Yeah, it started when I was 6, and I began to have the out of bodies that were interlaced with dreams and lucid dreams and nightmares. So I'd have like 4 or so different types of sleep-related spiritual experiences. All my experiences in the beginning were inner experiences, where I heard things or saw things invisibly or saw things in my dreams. I didn't have outer experiences till I got older, where I could more psychologically handle that. But at age 9, I did ask God that if he could show me all the things, the secret invisible things in the world that no man or king knew, that I would always tell people about. And 2 years later, David, started heavily when I was 11. And that's when I began having the fully conscious out of bodies that I could control. Usually any kind of psychic or mystical person will in their lifetime have some type of, or have had some type of sleep disturbance, whether sleep drunkenness, where you slept the full night and then the next morning you still feel drained, or inability, insomnia, the paralyzations, the nightmares, all of that. So usually a person who's had psychic experience or mystical experience has had sleep disturbances. I've had a lot of different ones. And so because of these out of bodies, and I would feel the paralyzations and didn't like it. So I would try to avoid it by staying up as long as I could. And a lot of times, and I'd be super tired the next day, and what I was doing was actually by avoiding the experiences, the dreams, I was actually bringing them on because I was at such a tired state when I went to sleep that I was too weak. The willpower was too weak to fight against it. Like a lot of times you can break out of a paralyzation by holding your breath or even by praying. You can break loose from the paralyzation because if you try to fight it during the paralysis, for me, it gripped me even tighter. And that's super scary. The person can escape just by breathing slowly through their stomach. That's the only thing that you can move. The chest, it's too hard, even for an athlete. But if you breathe through your stomach during the paralysis and hold your breath, you can snap free. But so I flatline. I have the near death. I'm in this dark void. It's a dark, velvety. What someone would say would be like a velvety black coffin-sized coma that the person is in, where they're awake but they're fully paralyzed, unable to move, and are just somewhere in existence if they're that awake. But and then there was a change where the pain stopped suddenly, and it was a good relief. Everything was warm again in that black void, and I felt that everything was going to be right wherever I was going to go, or if I would be to expire. So the blackness came, that dark void. It lasted approximately 15 to 22 seconds. I pop awake suddenly, somewhere in space and time. I didn't know where I was, but I knew that I was because I was thinking. Like I think, therefore I am. I knew that I was somewhere. And I didn't know what time it was until I looked down. I knew that I was in this an invisible realm somewhere. I was in my body was translucent. I could see myself, the water through my body. I was in solidly invisible form. But when I woke up, this is important too. I woke up in a gyro type sphere, what some may call a Merkaba, and it looked exactly like that thing, that gyroscope, the movie A Man thing that Jodie Foster got into in Contact. It was just like that. That's obviously some kind of method of transport. But I woke up in that, and as my spirit body began to materialize, the sphere that was rotating to began to dematerialize at the same time. I woke up, I regained consciousness after death, and then the realization of time and space. I realized that I was in the space or location of an invisible dimension or plane. And I didn't realize what time it was until I looked down, because I was looking around and saw my dead body down there. And just like one of your other guests said, I had no emotional reaction to it. I just looked at it. Like it was almost like a mannequin, but I saw that the knee was still stuck in. And I remembered I just died there. And yet I'm still alive. So I was super happy about that. There was a lapse of consciousness then. Once I had the realization of time and space, I realized that where I was, the time of death, and I was in an invisible dimension or plane. The scene changed. There was a lapse of consciousness, which is important to look for and notice too. If there's a sudden jump from one scene to another, whether in real life, in dreams, or in the out of body state. And we'll explain that later why that's important. I appear in this rotating room, and it was just like this. This was the thing. I appeared floating in midair in this room. And that was the life review room with no top and no bottom. And I was floating normally and naturally. The inner bands went one way and the outer bands went the opposite way, which is important too, especially for UFO things. So there were three screens, or in the UFO field, I should say. There were three screens right here. One showed me everything I thought, everything I said, and everything I've ever done. At the same time, like cards, when you shuffle them, I could see them in my mind's eye and understand and feel what I had did to others and how they felt about it, good and bad. But there was a little bad since I was only 13 or 14. While I was in that life review room, a voice came to my mind and asked me three questions. What have I ever done to help myself? What have I ever done to help others? And have you always believed in me? So I knew that was God talking, or that was what I perceived as God, the voice. And at the same time, On the side, I could see a spiritual figure who was higher than me, exhorting to the God figure in my behalf that I should be allowed to get into heaven or cross that higher threshold. So when he asked the last question, have you always believed in me? And he knew the answer was yes. And I said yes. Again, there was a lapse of consciousness. And I awoke on this beach and I looked around, and in the far distance, just like in the morning time, when you see the sun come up, I could see a sunrise. So I looked at it as if that was the only thing in sight. And the sun rose and went across the sky towards me without me seeing it move. It was here, then here, then here, and then about maybe 50 yards or half a football field from me. And as it moved up and towards me, as it moved up, I rose in unison upward, and I met it in the sky, in the air. I was no more higher than a straight line, but I wasn't. There was no fear or even no any thought of falling, and so I was or person to sphere. It was like a giant sphere, a sphere of consciousness. Was it is what it actually was. As the sphere rose in the air, it was first orange, and it sent out rays of like healing and energy and health. And midway up, it turned to a red, and this red was pulsing and throbbing and sending out waves, strong waves of energy, ecstasy, and love, especially the ecstasy and love. And there's a quote from my book that human beings were created by the Creator in such a way that ecstasy is the only dependable method of conduct / control for sentient beings. Ecstasy, a high spiritual level, is also associated with a transformation between life and death. So that's an important thing to notice. Any kind of super ecstatic or super fearful feelings in those invisible realms might be an illusion. It might not really be there. And you can penetrate that illusion by focusing on it fully. And you have better concentration in that world. And then real life meditation on the side helps. And here's a quote too, another one from the book, that highly focused concentration during advanced meditation produces a merging into things, and one becomes one with one's object of focus. And that's true. And here's a quick example. I was sitting in a tree. I saw a squirrel looking at me from about 20 feet away. And that surprised me because he was literally staring at me. So I stared back at him. And I jumped into his body, saw myself from his view, and then snapped into my body in less than a second. There's been other spontaneous out of bodies like that. And after the person has an out of body, just like yours, the cosmic residue is on them. And that gives them after effects. And that lasts permanently. And it also brings out that a spontaneous out of body or merging quality where you can super empathize or even feel the thoughts or know the thoughts of another person. Repeated out of body, you'll begin to merge into places, things, and people without even intending to or intending to. But that merging quality is a good thing because in the invisible world, when your emotions are like Mr. Spock, then you'll naturally be in that way. You won't be silly or anything. You'll be completely calm and stoically observant. Just like the picture of this guy here. Will be just like that. You'll be looking. That's why his eyes are blacked out, because he's seeing with his higher. He's seeing with his higher eye, his mind's eye, which can see, especially with concentration, can see beyond the illusion. And if it's illusion, it will simply disappear.
You have this life review, and you experience not only reliving things that happened in your life, but actual thoughts that you had. And I find
Yes.
that to be very interesting. So it seems to be, what would you say is the importance of even our own thoughts?
I think, yeah, I mean, what we think is super important. Like if we think in a dark place, we'll start living in a dark world. And if we think in a higher way, we'll start attaining things of the higher world. And every person has a certain thought process or order, and they have to get to know how their own individual thought process. Like some people are visual and they can look at something and see what's happening. Some people have to hear it. Some people have to read it, and some people have to do it. So once the person learns how their own conscious mind begins to work, then they can, through the dreams and meditations, begin to contact and communicate with their spiritual mind, or the mind of the spirit, which is the subconscious. That's the spirit body's conscious mind. When those two minds start talking, conscious and subconscious, you can do a lot in this world easily too. And but the best thing about that, you'll get to know and integrate with your own self. You'll become a 360-degree cemented individual. That's the highest benefit.
So basically what you're saying is not only do you relive experiences, but let's say someone cuts you off in traffic, or someone's rude to you, and you think to yourself, that son of a gun, right? Like you're going to relive that thought. Is this what you're
Yes,
saying?
yes, and you'll relive his reaction to how you acted, good or bad. You'll relive both at the same time, if that makes sense, and you'll feel it too. And you'll see from his side why he was mad, and you'll see exactly what you did. And like you said, the secret thoughts in secret are seen and recorded, uh, and they're neither judged or lectured on. It's just what it is. It's people with the God thing and the God judgment. His only thing is if you believe in him. That's a heavy thing. In fact, what you believe in is important in those invisible worlds too. And it's good to have like a power outside yourself. And but God doesn't. He goes with the totality of the person's life, and he can see into their future too. And but there's no, you're bad. There's none of that. There's no judgment like that. You judge yourself um, because you see what you've done, and you know that he sees it, and he's watching it with you. So when it comes down to, you can't say I didn't do it because he just replayed it for you. So that's an interesting thing to like with you. You literally, yeah, you can feel what you did and how the other person reacted, and see it from his view. Like if you punch someone, you would be the one getting the punch and feeling it from. Yeah, it's an interesting thing.
It seems that we're not judged by God, but we're judging ourselves, and that judgment is more like an overall, maybe not every single, or does it get precise like that? If you lived a perfect life, which is impossible really by definition, we all have different definitions of perfect. But let's say you were 99% good, but then you were rude here and you did, I mean, maybe at that point, does it get more precise?
No, I mean, he knows our human nature and knows that we're not perfect. But I think it's the overall intention and direction of their mind and will, what kind of will and intention they have, um, and what they do with the gifts that he gives us. Like the alcoholic is wasting what he could have been or should have been by his own willpower or his lack of. But the life review is an evaluation between God and the human, and his main thing is if you believe in him. That can cover it all. And there have been people ask, well, did Hitler did God forgive Hitler? You never know. But if you believe in him, not only are you forgiven, he forgives you before the judgment, because the judgment hasn't come yet. And he forgives you first, and then he judges you perfectly. Because when you're in between life and death, and there's like a first stage. The first heaven is earth. Second heaven, the afterlife. Third heaven is the heavenly realm where God is. And the first half of the near death kind of covers the person's physical life, while the second half goes to the higher dimensions. I work with the three world authorities in the near death, and they said that, now this is data for a while, from a while ago, but it seems to be accurate. They say 1 in 4, 1 in 10 make it into the white light, and 1 in 4 remember the near-death experience. Uh, but with the resuscitation methods that are available now, it's 24 years later. And I started 1997 to 2002 when I did my research. So it's a lot of, and then we have the internet too. So people are learning about the near-death at a rapid rate than before the internet days when you literally had to be in a library, books and papers. So, and that's good because people are waking up. Thanks to the resuscitation, people are waking up to that there is something more than this life. We're not. It's not a trap, and there is something better to strive for. There is a God. People are seeing that now every day. But so getting back to that near death. So the red lights were super pulsing and vibrating me at an ecstatic level, an orgasmic level that I was watching for, because that's not good to be aroused that much in those invisible realms. When you usually have the mind state of this, where there is no emotion. You're just there, observing and looking, at least for me, and I was used to that. So I was watching the ecstasy driven, and why it was that much. I was watching it suspiciously, but letting it happen. And also God's love, just like a red lettuce, a red lotus flower, how it slowly opened. God's love was coming out like that. There was a lot of, and that was God's forgiveness and his word that I would be allowed to get into heaven and go to a higher realm. There's always an ascension upwards in those things where the person goes from laying down to floating up and half being magnetized up too, while they're striving to get up to the higher realms. The person's natural inclination is to go back to where they once came from or once belonged, or go back to that who made them, and they'll instinctively seek it out in their invisible spirit body form. There's a lot of changes. There are several deviations in the physiology of the invisible spirit body, where it goes from like a shimmering soft drink teeming essence to a semi-solid, semi-teeming, to a solidly invisible essence that we would have during a regular out of body. And those changes were interesting too. So the red lights, and I'm still transitioning upward. I'm going into what look like cloud-like whites, cloud-like lights, and just as white as a cloud, and just as thick. And behind these lights would be where God was. And this is where the white light came from. The white light is the strongest of all the near-death lights, and they have a lot of lights, and some even have colors and sounds. Like I felt the color brown coming from, felt the depression. I had it during the near-death, a cloud-like thing floated in front of me, and I looked at it because you want to not interact with it, but interface with it and communicate with it non-verbally, because you're mainly on a subconscious level then, where it's non-verbal and more symbolic and feelings, thoughts, and what you see. But I saw that, so colors have a strong effect. And so I was entering into the white lights, and my consciousness dimmed and there was actually a lapse of consciousness between this stage too. But now the white lights shone on me as I was going up and as I went through them. And their primary applications were to elevate me and cleanse me, spiritually cleanse before I could go before God or appear before him. I had to be every cellular cleansed in a spiritual cosmic way. And then the elevation. Now, the scientists know that there's information in the light. And the white light has a lot of it. All of them did, but the white light had the most. And that's where the universal knowledge comes from. That's where the being one with everything comes from. And that's where the after effects, near-death after effects come from, that gets stronger after you come back to Earth year after year after year. And same with the out-of-body. Those out-of-body effects last and get stronger too. So the white lights are the ones that are responsible for those permanent after effects, where the person comes back different and is acting different. And they are different. But the person has to be elevated and cleansed fully before they can go to God. And that's what, for me, the white lights symbolize.
When you talk about, I think it's interesting that you you talk about that it's not earth and then heaven, that it's earth and then the afterlife and then heaven. You know, people tend to see it as like a dual thing, right? One or the other. You're saying there's, you know, three levels, potentially even more. How much does this have to do with, you said there's like 12 stages or something like this, or is that something different?
Those 12, the 12 stages that I was talking about were the 12 stages that I recognized and had in my near death. And they are actually the structure of most near death, whether they remember it or not, or whether they remember the order. People, uh, if they have a near death where they flatline and come back and they remember stuff, it usually happens. Those are the usual stages. And that's basically the order that they come in. Like when I first started, they didn't know a lot about the near death. This is like 95, 97. They knew, scientists knew then that people seemed to feel that they were out of their bodies. They met in a vision loved ones. There was a godlike figure. There was a life review. Uh, but there's so much more to it than that. The deviations in the physiology of the invisible spirit body, the different levels of consciousness, the length of time between death and reconsciousness after death, that merging, melding thing, and more. Like, and let me give you, and then we'll get back to like my, let me give you some of this. These are the stages, the prototypical stages of a near death. Some may have half and not remember the others, but there's first the struggle for life or death. That's where the person is trying to stay awake and they're bleeding out. Then there's the death slowdown where the person begins to realize I can't get out of this, the organ failure and the paralyzations. Then there's the death fade where the person is, the levels of consciousness changes, they're on their back, their organs are just about dimming and dying. And then there's the flatline itself. There's the dark void where the person is suspended temporarily while the spirit body begins to slowly come out of the physical. There's reconsciousness after death. There's the life review. Then with mine, there were the different spheres. And the person may see colors at this point or may interact with beings at this point. There's an ascension upward. And then there's that meeting and merging with God. And that's what happened right after the white light stage. So I get through this mist. As I'm going through this mist, I realize that I can still see the beach below while I'm disintegrating as I'm ascending upward. And I look down as I'm floating upward, and I see the lake where I had just died, yet as I'm still going softly through the clouds. And I was in spirit body form, yet I could still see the physical surroundings while half the spirit body. And that shows like a dual consciousness. And a dual consciousness also happens, like when a person's on the operating table, the doctor's sawing them. The anesthesia, because of the anesthesia, they have an induced or accidental out of body, spontaneous. They see themselves, they're up above their body. They see themselves on the operating table. Their spirit body can feel the doctor sawing into their leg. And at the same time, they can, if they want to see it from the physical body's perspective, they're suddenly there and looking up at the doctor too. And it shows that both the subconscious and conscious mind, there is a division of consciousness that Jung was talking about. And there is a division because both minds are separate and different. But they can unify and act as one too. But that's interesting. So I'm going up into the white lights. At this time, this disintegration is almost where I'm totally invisible. I'm merely just thought dead. I'm merging with having the cosmic consciousness, feeling everything in the world, feeling one with it too. And at one point during the near death, I'll get back to that right now, I stopped to listen to the earth and to where I was. The earth had a heartbeat that I could hear and feel, and it was in the same rhythmic pattern as my own. And I felt super connected to the earth, the ground, everything. That was at an earlier point during the near death, where I could feel the connection. Like whatever you focus on, then you either understand it fully or merge or unite with it. That's an interesting thing. Like if you think about going to China, you're suddenly there. If you think about if the world has a heartbeat, you can hear it. It's interesting.
I'm going to try not to interrupt for too long, but you said that it seemed like the Earth had a heartbeat. I
It
find that
did.
I find that very interesting because, would you say the planets themselves are alive? I mean,
Yeah.
excluding the ones that have like dried up and they're just rocks, maybe they were alive at one point. But you think the Earth itself is like a living organism?
Yes. Yes. And I could. It had a heartbeat. I don't know if it was breathing because this is like a brief thing, but it was beating and alive.
Well, I
And
don't know.
it,
I'm so sorry. I don't know how it's going to breathe for much longer if we cover the entire Earth's crust in concrete. But anyway, I hate to interrupt. I just had to say it.
yeah, no, that's all right. Yeah, it's a shame what they're doing to the planet. And now they're starting to do it out in outer space, throwing garbage out to space stations and stuff. They say there's a lot of litter just orbiting the planet. Maybe a strong rain will come one day and wash it all away. You know, I'm feeling that universal consciousness, one with the world, any kind of knowledge, future knowledge, and the after effects and all that, giving through all that light and all the wonderful after effects. And there's a lapse of consciousness, and I wake up sitting down like I am now in this like circular room of sorts. In the background, I can see beings moving, and as I focus in on that, because in that world, when you focus in on something, you get like telescope vision on exactly what you're looking at, and you can see the essence identity of it. At least with me, you can see the essence identity of it just by focusing on it fully. You merge with it, and your mind ascertains it all at once. That's what mysticism is direct, immediate knowledge from on high. And the mystic is different from a psychic in that the psychic has experiences that they neither fully control nor fully understand. But the mystic has had all those experiences and can easily deal with them or handle or control them, like the out of body, and knows them backwards and forwards. And the mystic has a direct relationship and wants a direct conscious union with God, where the psychic may be an atheist. So I wake up in this room. I see beings in the background. As I concentrate on them, a being appears right in front of me. And I saw that being as God. And as I start to look at it, the thing that we're in, I'm sitting on the floor, and that seems like a wild position for me to sit in, although I am sitting in front of God. So, you know, uh, that would kind of make sense. So we start to spin. And again, the inner rim of this thing goes one way and the outer goes another way. That centrifugal force thing. So I'm watching that. And this would be like the intermingling of our essences, the merging and melding, where one is physical and then the other is a spiritual and mental melding. And this would reanimate the life force in me when I was to be set back. So we were mixing together. And right before we started mixing, I said, I got to see this thing, this God. And so I looked up because I was slowly, when we began to mix and merge, I was slowly being rendered unconscious. And before I was knocked out fully, I looked up at him. And then he knocked me to sleep. But I was able to look up one more time. And then he put me to sleep fully. And I woke up under the dock. I swam to the top. My life force was reanimated somehow, swam to the top, choked out all the lake water, and then in full shock, crawled up the beach and just kept scraping the muck off my leg. And with and then I buried it because I was only 14. That was the 70s. And you really couldn't talk about things like I came out my body and was floating around, or I saw a UFO, or I saw God. You say that stuff back then, you would be in a crazy house. They had these white ambulances that would come up, and guys in a white coat, just like you see in the old movies, come out, walk you to the thing, straight jacket you, and take you away. But so
Um,
that
but
was the near death.
you bring up an interesting point. So how long was it until you Did you fully acknowledge this prior to you, sharing your story? Was this something you knew to be true the whole time? And then, how soon did you start kind of expressing that?
I knew that something real had happened to me. Um, it was too heavy then to comprehend because I was 14, I was in 10th grade, and I was just, a kid. And where the out of bodies and stuff I knew, and I didn't really, I just buried it for a while. It was too, but as I got older, and then I had to, in 75, near death research didn't even start till 77. So no one knew like what a near death was. I knew that I drowned and somehow was able to come back to life. And I didn't question it or nothing or think about it until the 80s, about 5 years after I was out of high school. I was 20, 21, old enough to deal with those things that happened to me as a kid, more cemented psychologically. And then people began to talk in the 80s. Paul Donahue, Hooper began to talk about the near death, and people were allowed to talk about that. And I saw that a lot of the other ones on TV were different than mine. But I kept studying. And in the 80s, I began to acknowledge the psychic abilities. Because when I was a teenager, I repressed them because I wanted to do my teenage things, sports and dating and stuff like that. And so in the 80s, I began to acknowledge and develop them and then learn more. And one of the after effects is like you have a hunger for knowledge. Just like in the Close Encounters when Richard Dreyfuss was reading all those books and stuff, you get like that. And you speed read right through them. And you just devour books on knowledge. And you become insatiable and you learn a lot fast because you're trying to study about what happened to you and trying to understand it. And the psychic powers increased in the 80s. And when I was a kid too, I had always done breathing exercises and visualizations. I didn't know what visualizations were back then, but I would always fully think inside my mind and imagine stuff, and heavily. In fact, some of the things I would imagine would soon come to pass. So I began to see at a young age that whatever I think in my mind, like over and over and over, can help to come into this reality. Like I used to imagine myself winning track races, having certain girlfriends, and I would get all those things. And then I had to do stuff in real life to get them too. Like actually talk to the girl or do push-ups to get on the sports team or whatever. But that inner life, there's a lot to it, and it just keeps expanding and expanding. Like you go into, like the saying, my father's house had many mansions, and each room leads to the other. Like a dream can lead to a lucid dream can turn into an out of body. Once you start having the out of bodies, then you become psychic. You're already psychic at night from the dreams and out of bodies. Then you become psychic in the day, and you're 24/7 psychic, and you're attuned to both worlds at the same time, looking for messages from the spirit world when you're awake, and then when you're asleep, looking for messages from the earth world. So it's an interesting thing.
Following your near-death experience, after you've literally stared death in the face, and it's not everyone that has that type of experience. So as far as after effects, I'm curious, did this make you more cautious because you have this like awareness that, hey, I could really mess around and die here? Did it make you more cautious or more willing to take risk because you're like, well, I could die tomorrow, so might as well take the risk, if you understand what I'm saying?
Uh-huh. Now, are you
Like,
saying
did it make you more fearful of situations or less fearful?
you mean immediately after the near death or years after the near death?
I suppose short term and then long term.
Um, yeah, immediately after the near death. No, it didn't make me any more careful, and I could see my after effects were strong. I could see the after effects coming on, and if anything, I got more confident because I had been like the introverted bookworm type. Because, in fact, I was a literal bookworm until the age of 11 when I began playing sports. And so I began to get more confident. I had a neurological after effect where I was a track star. And after the near death, I couldn't run track that year. My arm, I ran track, but the arm would spaz out. I had to hide it from the track team with the help of one of my co-friends, track star friends. The next year, I super exploded, and the after effects of the near death are super strong. And some of the scientists say it takes about it does take a while. Like if you see someone has a near death, and then 2 years later they're out talking about it to people. I don't know about that. The scientists say it takes about 7 years to fully integrate a near death into your life because it really changes you. Like the person may have the opposite personality. The shy one may become confident and some kind of public speaker. The bully may become some meek, loving, like minister. Uh, and so it almost gives the person, it balances out the person with what they need. But the after effects are nice and strong. A lot of there's psychic after effects. It's just was there anything that you want to ask me about the after effects or anything?
I mean, I presume, well, it sounds, I don't want to make any assumptions here, but it sounds to me like maybe there were more, unless I'm wrong.
More after
If
effects?
so, I'll inquire.
More after effects?
Yeah, were there
Oh
like,
yes, yes.
okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure I don't want to make any assumptions.
Yeah, the I mean, from the near death, the person will start to know things automatically. Will start to be able to feel or hear what someone's saying. Their health generally improves. Now, as far as in your original question, did I get? There were times in my life where I did get more careful as I got older, because you realize life is a super valuable thing, and you don't want to end it prematurely, or or deviate it from its natural higher path that it should be on. There were stages in and out. I was careful when I needed to be, and then bold when I needed to be. Yeah, but the near death produced a thirst for elevation through knowledge and good works and self-development. Some would say that a human being's primary purpose on this earth plane is to find themselves, then find their God within themselves and by themselves. And that spiritual path is a solitary one, not all the time, but it is basically a private, personal one where the person has a relationship with him and the invisible. And there's a lot out there too. But the highest goal is the creator or God. And to get to that, just in trying to attain to that level, the person super develops in every way, in health, in intellect, in kindness, in psychic abilities. They become more than psychic abilities then. And just even from an out of body, that expands the person a lot. And that's one good reason why people should try to have an out of body, because they can. And the breathings are a pathway through. The breathings can literally get you through and out of body while awake. And it's a bridge. That rhythmic breathing is a steady bridge that you can have continuity of consciousness where there are no last bits because you're fully awake the whole time. Yet in mental and physical control of your body. You don't want to freak out as you feel the paralyzations, and your mind is watching too. That's an interesting thing, where you were that reentry, where you were coming back into your physical body. Most people don't feel that, especially when it slowly comes down. So I may have to test you on your psychic aptitude after the interview or during it.
Well, bro, I'm certainly no psychic, at least
Oh,
not
you
that
never.
I know of. Who knows? I'm certainly no psychic, at least I've never claimed to be. In fact, people have asked me, and I don't know how the psychics are going to feel about, what my answer was. But I've spoke with psychics. We've had
Yeah.
great conversations. So maybe they know something I don't. I don't know.
But see, everyone, we're naturally psychic. That's just like a sense that we turned off or was turned off for us by society. Everyone has psychic abilities that they're just dormant. Like even sleeping is a psychic ability, and of course dreams. But just from your out of body, because a regular person can't have that kind of out of body where they see themselves coming back in and not be psychic. And I'm going to give you a little psychic experiment. Now, from the number between 1 and 5, I'm going to think of a number. I'm going to send you the number in my mind. I'm going to send you a picture of it without even thinking at any time. Just say what you think the number might be.
My first answer was 3, but then I double guessed myself. It's no shit.
Yes, yes. Everyone
Nice.
is psychic. As everyone is psychic, especially if they think that they are. A lot of what happens in life is how you think it will happen. And see, I knew you would get it. Especially like when in those kind of things, like just like when you go to a carnival and there's 3 balloons, orange, red, blue, and the prize is under one of them, and the person has to think or feel which one it is. And usually their first hunch or instinct is right, but they double guess and then go for the second guess, and it's wrong. The person has to automatically, and you'll get used to it, automatically let their higher subconscious just say the answer. It already knows. You just have to trust it when you say it. And those kind of easy games can help develop it. And you can also get a deck of cards, Dave, and initially say, is this red or black? And then look and see what color it is. Go through the whole deck. After a couple of days, you'll get used to, you'll be able to feel the right answer from the wrong one. Like you'll know this is wrong because a certain feeling told me it's not it. It's not black. It's really red. And just, and everyone should get a deck of cards and do that because you get so good at it. Within a week, you'll surprise yourself. And then you'll be so good at that, you will start switching to numbers. Yeah. And you can actually see the number just by letting that second mind do the work for you.
So if we have these abilities per se, and if they're being suppressed, I don't know if you ever thought about this, but if we do have them and they are being suppressed, do you have any ideas as to why or how it is they're suppressing it? Diet,
Um,
this type of stuff?
you mean the humans or like an external suppression, like from the invisible?
So
Because
in my mind, I was thinking humans, right? Is someone purposely doing this? Do they not want us to figure it out? Something like this?
I think the person themselves actually suppresses more information than any kind of like organization would do on us. I mean, there are things like the 5G towers and stuff that aren't of any help either. But a full healthy living, full good thinking, and good associates and that stuff will. But as far as suppression, there's like spiritual suppression because a lot of people can't remember every facet, every aspect of their near death, and they want to. Um, and in the alien abduction, they definitely suppress usually the whole abduction. And you can only wonder what the hell was happening that they had suppressed the whole thing for. And people come back messed up after those abductions. Like in my research, and I put it in the book, I found 7 memory issues uh, involved in the near death, and they are I've written them down on. They are these are problems associated with the clarity and memory retention in the near death, and they are lapses of consciousness, false memories. Those are like the illusionary veils. Problems with memory recall, problems with memory retention, how much they retain during and after the experience, problems with memory retrieval, how much can they go back and remember accurately what happened, memory accuracy, and then memory suppression, what you said. So there's a lot of issues, and the scientists in the near death research, we're always looking for the unusual or an anomaly. And there were some anomalies, like the memories issues. And also the scientists, they didn't tell the public about this, but I certainly can and have. The scientists were concerned, and I was concerned with what they called the controller and what I called the controlling agent in charge, a godlike figure that roamed the paranormal corridors at will, exerting its will on it wherever it shall choose. And this, because the scientists called it the controller, because a lot of them don't believe in a God, and they're not even allowed to talk about God back then on campus colleges. The scientists were afraid to tell the people and the university about this controller figure because it represented a God force or the opposite of a God force. So I looked into it myself, and it was what we had thought, we had surmised it would be. This picture is the second half of a written thing that I wrote that talks about the controller and the near death. And if you like, I can read it off for you too. I know it by memory.
So just to clarify, you're saying this controller, and I have seen the what you're talking about.
Okay.
And if you would like to read it, absolutely. But just to clarify, this controller, this is, you're not talking about God itself, if you will. This is something different.
The scientists felt it was something different than God, or a God-like or opposite of God figure. It is what we would call God. They're not really allowed to say God on their university campuses, even though they study psychic phenomena. But it was, they call it the controller. We know it as God. And that's what they were concerned with because they didn't know if it was good or bad. And they were looking at the levels of control, if any, that there were throughout the near death, like the person being paralyzed, being levitated, and things like that. I saw it as a God figure. So I merged back into the near death to see if what I saw was accurate while I was doing the research. And it was what I thought it was. It was God. So here's the thing. Here's the quote. Because he controls our, this is about the controller. Because he controls our life and death, it is the controller. Because it cannot be easily seen, he is the agent. It is he, God, the controlling agent in charge. Like a spiritual hunter, that I look for God's spiritual tracks throughout my NDE, completely sensing, but never seeing him until stage 12, the final stage before resurrection. In time, the controller's footprints began to appear throughout my near death, to my physical and spiritual vision, during and years after the near death. Stalking God's spiritual tracks involved analyzing a prevailing truth beyond the illusionary veils in several of the near-death stages, but confirming the essence identity of God could only be attained by melding back into my near-death, and also merging into God's present essence as well. And that kind of basically sums up what happened in the near-death and what happened with the research. And so this controller was an interesting figure in the near death.
You have that memorized so well. That's incredible. You know, I just
Yeah,
have to say
well,
that, you know.
yeah. Well, writers, they always usually remember what they write, like their lines, they remember, like some actor or something.
Oh,
And then,
that's fair. Because when you write it down, you're kind of burning it into your
su-
brain more, right?
yeah, superimposing it into your brain. And then this was a real life thing, so it's easy. Once I get started in the first couple of sentences, it comes all back. And it's, yeah, it's a fun thing to think about and reflect on.
I'll have trouble remembering most things, but somehow I could remember every lyric to a rap song or some, you know what I
Yes,
mean? It's like, because
yes.
one line goes into the other. You mentioned alien abductions. And so I would, you know, before I even ask the question, I would presume that you believe in aliens outside of this planet.
I believe that aliens exist. Yes. I think that they're interdimensional and that they're one of their prime goals is to physicalize in solid human form like we are. That's one of the main things that they want to do, and that they've been jealous of our physicality and that they are working on. It looks like they're halfway through the way people keep talking about aliens or among us and stuff, but they want to physicalize so they can do the things we do, but in a super demonic way. Like they literally want to bring hell on earth, as above, so below. They're going to literally do that where they're on earth. So it's a deep thing, that alien thing. Oh, Dave, also, do you remember Barney and Betty Hill?
I'm not sure. It sounds familiar, but I couldn't tell you.
They were the first couple to ever be verified by the US government of an alien abduction. They were a black and white couple from New Hampshire.
Okay.
She was actually Indian, but looked white. And she did attribute some of her experiences to her native heritage. But my dad knew Barney. They were in World War II together, and Barney was from Philly, like Dad was. So he knew Barney before Betty. And if you look them up online, you'll see a lot of info. They even made a movie about it with James Earl Jones playing Barney. But they were family friends of ours. So, and we would go up to their house in the 60s, like every summer, every winter, stay the weekend, listen to the story, and then drive home. And it was around that time that I first saw my first alien. He stood above me on my bunk bed and looked right down at me. And I think I had to be like 7 or less. I just went right under the covers. But I would later have other alien experiences. In fact, I was cutting the lawn one day, and my dad was out there, and I had on short pants. He said, "Eugene, what are these scars?" I said, "What scars?" I had 2 surgical scars right between my legs. I was about 12 then, but I never knew where they came from. I told him they've always been there. And I showed them to Dr. David Jacobs, the UFO World Authority of the 90s. And this was about 2007 or '09, or no, maybe around 2011. I showed them to him. He says, "Yes, those are abduction scars." So I can remember fighting with beings when I was in that state of paralysis. And paralysis is one of the symptoms of an alien abduction. That alien thing is, and then the Barney and Betty Hill. I've seen 3 UFOs. One with my son, one with an Ohio friend, Roger, and a couple other weird things. But I definitely know that they exist. Um, they're into the, and I believe, just like the FBI said in 1949, I believe that they live in an interdimensional plane that interpenetrates our own. Like we're in the middle, and they're like that. They can see us, but we can't see them. Not in our conscious state. And that's why they have to literally drug us when the abduction takes place, and it's interesting how they get us when our levels of consciousness and our willpower and strength are at the lowest, when we're deep asleep. They come in. And what they've been doing lately, and is more subtle and easier for them, is to just paralyze the human, take out the spirit body, and then work on the spirit body, because that's where the battery of all the cosmic energy is. Work on the spirit body, and then allow it to go back into the physical. And so that's an astral abduction. There's a lot of there have been accounts where people who have had out of bodies suddenly wake up aboard a UFO. I've had that happen before. So I saw that there was a connection through all of these things. The scientists I work with only knew about their fields. One knew about out of bodies, the other near deaths, the other UFOs, but none of them had studied the other fields. They only knew about that one field, were locked into that, and couldn't see that all these things were connected in God's paranormal house mansion.
How do you think they pick, if aliens are abducting people, okay? How do you think they go about picking the person? Is there a certain type of person they pick?
Some people think that they go by the blood type. Some people think that the more spiritually inclined are likely to be picked. The people with psychic inclinations, just like the scientists, are looking for people who were psychic as children. That's why they picked me to research, because it's easier if you've experienced it at a young age, then you grow up with it. It's almost like normal. But the aliens seem to pick people who are based on their genetics, their belief systems, and those would be the 2 main things I would think: genetics and belief systems. And they are doing more than just observing and routine samples. They are, and I work with Dr. Jacobs because he had a negative view on the aliens, as I do. And I worked one-on-one with him for 12 years, and I taught him a lot about like the mystical side of stuff, which he didn't believe in at all. I told him, but you don't believe in psychic stuff, yet your patients tell you that they were brought through car windshields and solid walls into UFOs that fly in the sky and that disappear. That's spiritual stuff. And by 2014, he admitted that, like ballet and some of the others, he should have incorporated the psychic in with the UFO thing. These aren't metal ships coming from rock planets. These are interdimensional things that appear to our eyes, but are also oftentimes to our mind's eye. People talk about Operation Blue Beams or if these are hallucinations, but that single focus on them, whether it be through meditation or literally just looking at it, can help the person to pierce the veil of what they're looking at and see the essence identity of what they're, the person, place, or thing. But they're definitely on a program. They are on a program. It'd be nice if the government told us much because they know more than us, about 80 years more than what we do. It'd be nice to get that kind of info. But they also rely on the experiences because we're the ones who have the experiences. And a lot of people don't tell those secrets what happens. And they know that regular people have the most information. If everyone documented their own stuff, the scientists would have no one to go to. And when the scientists do get a person that they want to work with, they usually, in their books, reference textbooks or books in the store, say case C745. They don't even give the person's name, number, or anything. They take all the person's information, the raw data, and then present it as their own. When really, the person in Kentucky is the one who knows it.
You said that some of these extra dimensional aliens, that they're here to bring hell on earth, for lack of better words. Do you think there's good spirited aliens as well?
Yes. And some people, because I asked Betty Hill this, I interviewed her in 99 for 3 hours. She's pretty famous. And she said this was her longest and most exhausting because I interviewed her as the mystic, as America's mystic. And also, Dr. J and her were having a feud. I want to see who was right between their feud about the aliens going through and people going through solid objects. And I saw that they were both right, that people can be physically walked to a UFO and they can be, especially astrally, brought through solid objects. So, and what was the original question, Dave?
I'm having trouble remembering myself.
Okay.
Oh, no,
Oh,
I got you. Okay. So the question was, do you think there's good-spirited aliens as well?
yes. Yes. In fact, some of what we call angels, some of what we call aliens might actually be angels, especially the good ones. And I asked Betty Hill that. I said, "Do you think people mistake aliens for angels?" She had never considered that. That stumped her. That was the only thing that she couldn't answer. She said she didn't know. But I think a lot of people, I think there are good angel spirits, protectors out there. I've had them and I've heard them warn me in advance about things. And we also have our subconscious. But yes, there are spirits that are created to protect us. Like they say, each person has three of them, like a kid-like spirit, a female type spirit, and then like a big father or big brother type spirit. And I've seen them and I've called on them. And I do believe that everyone has a certain amount, up to three or so, spirits that do help them and are always with them. I do believe that.
If we were to come across a spirit or an angel, or some people say demons, this type of stuff, what if these are just different types of life forms that we can't really comprehend? In fact, I have put thought into this. Someone was talking about haunted houses, like, are ghosts real? Well, what if your house is haunted, but it's just a different, like, life force? Maybe you attribute the fear to it because you don't understand it.
Yes. In fact, that's a good point that you made because I had always wanted to see stuff. All my experiences were mainly inner experiences, near death dreams, UFOs. I wanted to see something slide across the room. And so I found this haunted house. And I took some friends with me, some Spanish friends. They were teenagers. I was in my 30s. And my son's goddaughter, she came too, and her boyfriend. There's five of us. Me and the guys went up to this haunted house. And you could tell from the street that there was some sort of dark vibes coming from the house. We went to the house, saw two beams of light moving in the weeds and woods behind the house. And we got at all angles to make sure that what we saw was right. And then we got out of there. And a week later, I went back with Cindy, the girl. And while because something had followed me from that house and haunted me all week. And when I would go to sleep at night, or especially come out at night, there'd be like a dark cloud above the ceiling that was moving and stuff. It looked like what people might call a portal. there's something moving on, and I was freaked out until the eighth day when I felt that it's coming from the house, and that energy is reacting to the fear we had at the house. When we went to the house, we were spooked out, and I think that the electromagnetic energy of the house was magnified by the fear that we had in it. The emotion made it super. But there was also something that literally came from the house, followed me home, and stayed there until the fear was gone. As soon as I thought that I was afraid of the house, that's what made it more scary. The thing went away. And fear, that primal, because it was a primal fear, I was terrified. Only at night, though. And I would always see that thing on the ceiling. But on the eighth day, when I realized what it was, or felt I realized, then it went away. So I took two girls to this place. The first one didn't like it, and she was running away from it in 3 minutes. And this was on film. Then at the end of the street, at the edge of the sidewalk where she felt comfortable, she suddenly started acting different. She slid right across the sidewalk. And then the house magnified her look. She was already cute, but the house made her look like a super movie star. You can see it on film. She was fully glowing. The other girl, and one was in the wintertime, that was Sarah. The other girl, Jennifer, I took her in the summer. Her dad was nearby too, watching. It was 100-degree heat, and Sarah's was like 22 degrees with snow. 100. This girl loved the house and kind of merged with it. The house magnified Sarah's looks to a high degree, which we got on film. And then Jennifer, the other girl, loved the house and felt at one with it. And her looks changed 7 times in 11 seconds on camera. The hair changed, the eyes changed, just like in that movie, The Craft, where they were able to, but hers changed faster. And so I went back to the first girl, and I filmed her the whole way while I was driving. That's when this was back in 2002, when they had those like camcorders were popular. So I filmed her all the way. And when I went home, I looked at the footage after a few days of not looking at it. And in slow motion, her scenes in the car went from the nice, normal 22-year-old Sarah into like this hideous witch-like creature with the nose, and she even had a pointed hat on in the film. So the film version was the opposite. It was a sneaky, crafty, and she was giving sneaky looks in the car with me. And then when I put it in normal speed, it was the normal Sarah talking, and that was wild. I plan to get that out in the Betty Hill film this year.
If you could ask one question to the person watching this video right now, or even any person on the planet picked out of complete random, if you could ask them one question, what would it be?
Probably, what do you want out of life? You know, because most people don't know what they want, and a lot of them don't think about it. But what do you want out of life? Usually, once you know what you want, it doesn't take long before you get it.
If people want to see more of your stuff and, where they can find your book and everything else, do you mind letting them know where they could find you?
Yeah, I am. If you go to Eugene Braxton online and Eugene Braxton at wix.com, you can find my book. And then maybe I'll send you a link. Can I send you a link, Dave? Okay.
Oh, absolutely. I'm
Okay.
gonna put everything in the description as well. So
Okay.
I got you.
Yeah. Go online. Go to my website, wix.com, Eugene Braxton, or go to Facebook. I'm on there. I'm also on Twitter, but it's been mainly Facebook and YouTube lately. So I can be, and then my website, yeah. But the book is packed with info, everything from dreams to remote viewing to the near death to the aliens. Yeah.
What is the name of the book, by the way? I don't have it memorized. My apologies.
Yeah, that's right. And the book's called America's Mystic Solves Near Death Riddle.
Awesome. I like that
Mm-hmm.
cover. That's a cool cover photo too.
Thanks, Dave.
Eugene, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. And somehow, I can't believe it, but there's somehow still more that we can cover. So you're more than welcome to come on a second time if you would like. But thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Dave. I would like to come back. Yeah, we could have a whole subject on out of bodies too, or dreams, or both, or or the aliens or the near death. But I would like to come back, or consciousness, any of that stuff, how to have an out of body. But yeah, it's thanks for having me. We had a good interview, and can't wait to see it. Hmm.
Of course, man. Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. It really is. You know, I say the same thing all the time when people are on, but like I truly mean it. So I appreciate your time. And to everyone else watching at home, thank you so much for your sliver of time. This has been ours. Eugene, thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thanks a lot, Dave.
All right, peace out.
You too.
I guess I'll just combine these questions. Again, I'm just thinking out loud. Bear with me. I try to be as professional as I can, but you know, I'm just
You're
so
doing good. You're doing good, Dave.
okay, cool. I do want to get into the near-death experience kind of early on. However, I have to ask because you're from Philly, correct?
Yes.
So, have you ever been to Love Park?
Oh yeah, a lot. Yeah, Eddie used to skate there, my son, and I've been there many times, hundreds of times. Have
Oh,
you?
that's yeah, I've only been once. We went up there
Okay.
for like a weekend.
Okay. Yeah, they changed it around. I don't even think the big love thing might be there, but the background is different. But the people still skate across the street where the big checkerboard thing is, or chess set is. They skate there too.
They took out the fountain, and we will move on, but I had to ask because that's like
That's
such
all
a
right.
it's such a legendary skate spot. They took out
Yeah.
the fountain, and people used to do tricks into the fountain all the time. Um,
Yeah.
when I went
It
there,
was
they had the fountain on, so you know,
okay.
I wanted to like ollie into it, like
Yeah.
into the water, and like I always think about it. I'm like, I should have just done it, man. Like, come on.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They. I mean, they used to get away with a lot of stuff there, and skaters would be flying all over the place, in both blocks. But so yeah, it's kind of like a Philly landmark.